All right, we have Dr. Ed Lee here. He is a debate coach out of Emory University. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what are your expectations for the upcoming debate?
My expectations are actually pretty high. I think that both of these individuals are seasoned professionals. I think that they have contrasting communication styles that will make for a very entertaining debate. And I think that they have a vested interest to do a course correction of what we saw last time we gathered together for a debate.
Yeah, how do you see this being different than the presidential debate?
Woo! The presidential debates turned out to be a verbal wrestling match. I think that this will be the policy debate that we were all craving for, that Mike Pence is the rhetorical foil to President Trump, and Kamala Harris is a prosecutor who engages in cross-examination and loves the notion of evidence. So I think that we are actually going to see a debate that is about the policies and about two different sets of values around the policies.
So you kind of touched it right there, but what are the attack methods that you expect from each candidate right there?
Mike Pence is brilliant at that Midwestern folksy, I'm going to tear you down without you knowing that's what I'm doing. And it's so effective at challenging arguments and dismissing arguments without coming across as being rude or, dare I say, nasty. And Kamala Harris, if you viewed any of her cross examinations in the Senate, you see that she is very aggressive in the way in which she challenges, takes down, and probes the people that she is cross-examining, and that will be the contrast between them.
So let's talk about that white elephant that's in the room, President Trump's COVID diagnosis. How do you see Kamala Harris kind of stepping into that zone and utilizing that in her favor?
This is an interesting communication dilemma that I think that she has. That she has to talk about COVID-19, but she can't talk about it in a way that dismisses the fact that our president is ill and sick and still is belabored. And so how does she talk about that while acknowledging sympathies and an understanding is a difficult challenge, but I think that she will. And I think that the way in which she will talk about this is the way in which we all need to be hyper aggressive and vigilant in the way in which we're dealing with this, and that we can't be flippant and dismissive, and that there have been some times in which she believes that the president has done that.
Do you see this being a different vibe altogether? We're going to have that plexiglass that's separating them, and they're also going to be further apart. How is that going to change this debate specifically?
I hope that it lowers the temperature on the conversation a good bit, and I think that it will. I actually don't think that the plexiglass and the distancing is necessary to do that. I think that that would already be there. But I do think that it helps to do that. The vibe that we will see is a vibe of the presidential debates of the bygone era, where there was an elevated notion of civility and a respect for the office that the candidates are striving to hold, even if there's not respect for the candidates themselves. And I also think that both candidates desperately have a desire to have a course correction over last week, that they understand that their two candidates at the top of the ticket didn't do their parties a service with the way in which they comported themselves, and that they're going to go a different direction.
So last week we talked about how both presidential candidates were preparing for the debate. How is it different for these vice presidential candidates in preparing for this one?
I think that their first strategy is to do no harm. That the reality is that the vice presidential debate, very few people actually make a decision based upon who's on the VP ticket. And the question is, are we talking about things that the VP candidate did that overwhelms what the presidential candidate wants to talk about? So do no harm is the first thing that they're going to be talking about. Kamala Harris has a different set of goals and objectives. She's the turnout voter for folks in the urban areas of our city, whether Atlanta, where I spend a good bit of time, or in the Oakland, LA area where she spent some time. How is she ginning up interest or Joe Biden amongst that collection of people, and that she is going to work to do that. And I think some of the things that she talks about will speak to that.
So, say you're the debate coach for Pence, and then you're the debate coach for Harris. What are your kind of last words to them before they take that stage?
For Mike Pence, it is to recite many of the things that Donald Trump talked about in the first presidential debate, but do it in that down home, folksy sort of way that he is used to. And that will be easy for Mike Pence because he has done that for 4 years and been very successful at doing that. For Kamala Harris, it really is to enjoy the moment. This is a historic moment where we have the first Asian American on a presidential or vice presidential debate stage and the first Black woman. Enjoy the history of this particular moment and try not to allow it to overwhelm you.
Do you think that will ultimately play in her favor?
I actually think that it will. I think that she is going to do very well. I don't know who wins or loses this debate, but I do think that the country is in for a treat. And I hope that a lot of people tune in and are not discouraged, because these are two people who are really interested in talking about the policies, and they're interested in talking about them in very different ways from very different perspectives. And this is what debates should be about. So I am hopeful. And I hope that Vice President Pence and Senator Harris will not let me down and will not let the country down in having us understand the role of debate and the value that it can play in us making better decisions.
All righty, Dr. Ed Lee right there, a debate coach from Emory University. Sure to be an exciting night, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.